Oh, hello everybody. Welcome back to the show. This is Aman, entrepreneur based in Japan. It's early morning and it's raining here, but I'm out doing my morning outdoor workout slash walk slash whatever, outdoor activity. And today, so I have been thinking about setting up a Japanese entity. I have a US entity for my company, and I just wanted to maybe make a video. I'm not sure if I'll upload this, but if I do, I wanted to make a video about the thought process behind that and what I've learned so far about the process, right? So there's so let's start with the purpose of having a Japanese entity, right? The first one is that if you want to hire people in Japan, or you want to do any major financial transactions in Japan, then you need, you don't necessarily need a Japanese company, because you can also start a branch office, what's called a branch office, for your foreign company, and you can technically hire employees there and you pay them from abroad, basically, right? But you won't be able to do any major financial transactions. You won't be able to get a bank account necessarily, at least a real bank account. I could be wrong about this. Don't quote me on this. I'm still learning. I'm figuring this out. But what I've learned is that you won't be seen as a trustworthy and legitimate invested company. Like, they won't see the people, which is let's say the Japanese government or any major banks, or especially even smaller banks. They don't really see you as trustworthy unless you have a real corporation in Japan, right? Secondly, it's much harder to hire employees and pay them from Japan, right? You have to comply with local laws and everything. And so it's really and it's also like you are completely dependent on the international, so if I have a US company, then I would be completely dependent on the US company for everything if I don't have a Japanese entity. That's pretty straightforward, right? If something happens in America, we're talking like doomsday shit, right? But if something happens in America, or if the laws change in some way, or whatever happens, right, then it might negatively affect the overall company. So it's always good to have like I said, I want to build a company that stands the test of time and that has a global presence. So you will have to eventually have a presence, like a real presence, an entity in most of the countries or the regions that you want to have a corporation in. A lot of people use Singapore as their base for the Asian market. And Singapore, the good thing about Singapore is that, usually, even if you have a global contract, right? Let's say you have a contract between a company in the US and a company in Europe. Often what will happen is the jurisdiction that they will use in case of any conflict will be Singapore. Like the Singapore law and the Singapore court applies. I don't know how they do that, but apparently that's the thing. That's a major popular thing to do. Okay, so now let's talk about what else is there on this topic before we move on. as for the motivation for starting up. Yeah, I mean, I could take some examples, like a lot of, by the way, I hope you can hear me. It's raining, so, but still. So for example, Stripe has a Japanese entity. They've always had engineers in Japan. And there's also, I mean, all these are the major companies, right? Google, Amazon, Microsoft, they've all set up Japanese entities quite early on. And I think, if branch offices could get the job done, then, all these companies wouldn't be setting up shop here, right? So I've pretty much decided so far that, my company will have a Japanese entity, a real entity. And it's actually a more complicated discussion than just like, yo, of course you need it. It's not exactly obvious, right? Okay, so next thing, what kind of companies are there? So I've already talked about the branch office, and apart from that, if you want a company in Japan, an incorporation, you have two types. Basically, you have a joint stock corporation, which is a kabushiki gaisa, right? You might have heard that word before. And the other one is an LLC, a limited liability corporation. There is no stock. There's only partners who own the whole company, basically, right? And it's a much simpler business. It's a much simpler, setup where you don't have any equity. You don't have a lot of the rules that apply to shareholders and this and that and regulatory compliances. But it's also seen as like, because there's less regulation on an LLC, because it's basically like if you're one person, 2-3 people setting up a consulting firm, like a consulting practice or something like that, then you don't need a fancy corporation structure, right? So it's pretty much like, hey, we got together, we have a legal entity, boom, let's get to work, right? But it's also then less legitimate in many cases, like for example, in terms of like raising money and so on, right? Even as a loan. So the Godo Kaisha, which is the LLC, that is also very much cheaper to set up. I think it's cost like half what it costs. I mean, roughly, right? These are rough figures, but half of what it costs to set up a kabushiki gaisha. And kind of quicker as well, right? You have fewer steps to go through. So yeah, and the kabushiki gaisha, of course, is a joint stock corporation. It can be made into a subsidiary of a foreign company, and it can also become a parent company for a foreign company. So wow, it's like early, so the school kids are starting to come out. I guess I was really early in, even by Japanese school kid standards. It's been a long time since I've been in school or gotten out of it, but I kind of forgot what time did I wake up back then and how. And like, how did I wake up? Actually, I didn't wake up all those years. Like my parents would wake me up, right, to go to school. But anyway, digressing from the topic, now I'm waking up myself as an adult. And that's been quite a journey. But yeah, so I'll probably set up a kabushiki gaisha, and I'll talk about this next time. But yeah, that was a quick update on my side. Thank you.